The champagne bubbles tickled my nose as I laughed, spinning in my ivory dress under the chandeliers. Everything about today had been perfect. The ceremony in the gardens, the vows that made even stoic Uncle Robert dab his eyes, the way Daniel had looked at me like I was his entire world. Mrs. Samantha Torres. I kept repeating it in my mind, savoring how the name felt. Sam. My college roommate Maya grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the dance floor. Come on, they're playing our song. I glanced back at Daniel, who was deep in conversation with his groomsmen near the bar. He caught my eye and winked, that crooked smile spreading across his face. My heart still fluttered after 3 years together. I blew him a kiss and let Maya drag me into the crowd of swaying bodies. The DJ transitioned into a slower song, and the floor shifted as couples paired off. I was making my way back to Daniel when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Hey, stranger. I turned to find Marcus standing there, hands in his pockets, that familiar shy smile on his face. My ex-boyfriend. We'd dated for 2 years in college before amicably parting ways when he moved to Seattle for work. I'd invited him to the wedding. Daniel knew about our history, and Marcus had been part of my friend group for so long that excluding him felt wrong. Marcus. I'm so glad you made it, I said, genuinely pleased. How was the flight? Long, but worth it. You look beautiful, Sam. Really happy. His eyes were sincere, warm in that way that had first attracted me to him years ago. Thank you. That means a lot. The song swelled around us, and without thinking, I reached out and touched his forearm, squeezing it gently. Thank you for being here. I know it's probably weird, but... Not weird at all, he interrupted. I'm happy for you. Daniel seems like a great guy. We chatted for another minute about his job, his new apartment in Seattle, mutual friends we'd lost touch with. Normal, easy conversation. When the song ended, I excused myself to find Daniel, floating on the high of the evening, surrounded by everyone I loved. I found him exactly where I'd left him, except his expression had changed entirely. The warmth had drained from his eyes, replaced by something cold and shuttered. His jaw was tight, and he gripped his whiskey glass so hard his knuckles had gone white. My stomach dropped. Daniel? Honey, what's wrong? Nothing. The word came out clipped, sharp as glass. That's clearly not true. What happened? I reached for his hand, but he pulled away slightly, just enough that I noticed. I said nothing, Sam. I'm fine. He drained his glass and set it down with more force than necessary. I need some air. He walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing there in my wedding dress, confused and suddenly cold despite the warmth of the reception hall. His best man, Josh, appeared at my elbow. Give him a minute, Josh said quietly. He'll be okay. What's going on? Did something happen? My voice came out smaller than I intended. Josh's expression was uncomfortable, sympathetic. Maybe just. I don't know, Sam. It's your wedding day. Don't let it get to you. But it was already getting to me. I looked around the room, trying to understand what had shifted in the 5 minutes I'd been talking to Marcus. My mother was laughing with Daniel's aunt. The dance floor was packed with joyful guests. Everything looked perfect, but something fundamental had broken, and I didn't even know what I'd done wrong. I found Daniel on the terrace, his back to the doors, shoulders rigid as he stared out at the city lights. Daniel, please talk to me. He didn't turn around. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, controlled in a way that scared me more than yelling would have. I saw you with him, Sam. Touching him. Laughing with him like I wasn't even here. My breath caught. Marcus. We were just talking. He's an old friend. He's your ex-boyfriend. Daniel finally turned, and the hurt in his eyes made my chest tighten. On our wedding day, Samantha. Our wedding day, and you. He trailed off, shaking his head. It was nothing. A friendly conversation. You knew I invited him. I knew you invited him. I didn't know you still felt comfortable enough to touch him like that. Like you used to. The accusation hung between us, heavy and wrong. This was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, and somehow, without meaning to, I'd turned it into something else entirely. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of forced smiles and mechanical movements. I cut the cake with Daniel's hand over mine, both of us grinning for the cameras while a chasm opened between us that the guests couldn't see. I threw the bouquet, Maya caught it, squealing with delight, and danced the obligatory dances, but Daniel's body was stiff against mine, his responses to my whispered apologies monosyllabic. "We'll talk about it later," he kept saying, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. When we finally escaped to the vintage car decorated with just married streamers, the silence was suffocating. The driver pulled away from the venue, and I watched the twinkling lights fade in the rearview mirror, feeling like I was leaving behind more than just our reception. "Daniel, please." I reached for his hand in the darkness of the back seat. "Can we just talk about this?" He didn't pull away this time, but his hand lay limp in mine, unresponsive. "What do you want me to say, Sam?" "I want you to tell me what you're thinking. I want you to understand that what you saw, it wasn't what you think it was." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Wasn't it?" Because from where I was standing, I saw my wife. He emphasized the word, and it should have sounded sweet, but instead it sounded bitter, being more animated and comfortable with her ex than she'd been with me all night. "That's not fair. I was talking to everyone. I was happy, celebrating." "You touched him, Samantha." His voice cracked slightly, revealing the pain underneath the anger. "The way you used to touch him. I've seen the photos from college, remember? You showed me yourself. That same casual intimacy, like it was the most natural thing in the world." Guilt washed over me because he wasn't entirely wrong. I had touched Marcus's arm the way I might touch any friend, but Marcus wasn't just any friend. He was someone I'd shared 2 years of my life with, someone I'd loved before I even knew Daniel existed. And I hadn't stopped to think about how that might look, how it might feel to the man I'd just married. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I wasn't thinking. It was thoughtless and insensitive, and I'm sorry." The driver pulled up to the hotel where we'd booked the honeymoon suite, the same hotel where Daniel had proposed 6 months earlier on the rooftop restaurant. He'd had them fill the space with candles and roses, had gotten down on one knee while a violinist played our song. It had been magical, perfect, everything I'd ever dreamed of. Now the lobby felt like a mockery of that memory. We checked in silently, the desk clerk's enthusiastic congratulations falling flat. In the elevator, I caught our reflection in the mirrored walls, me in my wedding dress, now slightly wrinkled, mascara smudged from the tears I'd tried to hide. Daniel in his tuxedo, jaw still tight, eyes fixed on the floor numbers as they climbed. The honeymoon suite was gorgeous, decorated with rose petals and champagne on ice, a congratulatory note from the hotel manager. Daniel walked straight to the window, loosening his bow tie with sharp, frustrated movements. "Did you want him there?" The question came out of nowhere, quiet but dangerous. "Did you invite Marcus because some part of you wanted him to see you get married? To see what he gave up?" "What? No. Daniel, that's crazy." "Is it?" He spun around, and I saw tears in his eyes now, which somehow hurt worse than the anger. "Because I need to understand, Sam. I need to understand why, on the day you married me, you needed to have that moment with him. It wasn't like that. Marcus is part of my past, yes, but that's all he is. I invited him the same reason I invited everyone else, because he's been part of my life, part of my story." "And what part of your story am I?" Daniel's voice broke completely now. "The sequel? The second choice? The guy who was there to pick up the pieces after you two ended things?" "Stop it. You know that's not true." I moved toward him, desperate to close the physical and emotional distance. "You're my husband. You're the person I chose to spend my life with. Today was about us, about our future. Then why does it feel like it was about your past?" He sank onto the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. "I've tried so hard not to be that guy, Sam. The jealous, insecure guy who can't handle that his wife had a life before him. I thought I was okay with Marcus being invited. I thought I'd dealt with my feelings about him." This was new information, delivered like a confession. "What feelings?" Daniel looked up at me, and the vulnerability in his expression made my heart ache. He was your first serious relationship. Your first love. And his successful and charming, and you two had this whole history together. When you told me about him, showed me pictures, I saw how you smiled talking about those memories. And I knew intellectually that you chose me, that you love me. But seeing you with him tonight, seeing how easy it was between you two. He trailed off, shaking his head. I knelt in front of him, taking his hands in mine. Daniel Torres, I love you. Not as a second choice or a consolation prize, but because you're kind and funny and because you see me in a way no one else ever has. Marcus and I were good together once, but we ended for a reason. We wanted different things. He's not you, and that's exactly why I'm here in this room, wearing your ring, with your last name. Then why did you touch him like that? The question was softer now, but still pointed. Why did it look so natural? I thought about it, really thought about it. Because I forgot, for just a moment, that our history might matter to you. Because I was swept up in the happiness of the day and wasn't being mindful. Because I was careless with your feelings. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The apology hung in the air between us, and I watched him process it, saw the war in his expression between wanting to forgive and wanting to hold on to his hurt. Finally, he pulled me up onto the bed beside him, wrapping his arms around me. I don't want to fight on our wedding night, he murmured into my hair. I don't want this to be what we remember. But even as I held him back, even as we lay down together still in our wedding clothes, I knew it was already too late. This would be what we remembered, not just the beautiful ceremony or the joyful dancing, but this moment of rupture, this crack in the foundation we'd thought was solid. And I couldn't help wondering what other cracks were hiding beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to split wide open. Bali should have been paradise. The resort Daniel had booked was stunning, a private villa with an infinity pool overlooking terraced rice fields, open-air bedroom with gauzy white curtains that billowed in the tropical breeze, staff that appeared silently to deliver fresh fruit and flower arrangements before disappearing like benevolent ghosts. We'd planned this trip for months, poring over travel blogs and restaurant reviews, marking must-see temples and hidden beaches on Google Maps. It was supposed to be 2 weeks of pure romance, the beginning of our forever. Instead, we moved around each other like polite strangers. The concierge recommended this restaurant for dinner, Daniel said on our third morning, looking at his phone instead of at me. We could get a car at 7. Sure. Sounds nice. I spread sunscreen on my shoulders, watching him from behind my sunglasses. He was still beautiful to me. The morning light caught the gold in his brown hair, highlighted the strong line of his jaw, but he felt 1,000 miles away. We went through the motions. Toured ancient temples where I took photos of him that he barely smiled for. Ate elaborate meals that might have been cardboard for all the attention we paid them. Made love twice, mechanical couplings that left me feeling lonelier than before, Daniel rolling away immediately after to stare at the ceiling. On the 5th day, I couldn't take it anymore. We need to talk about this. I set down my book, hadn't managed to read more than a page anyway, and turned to face him on the daybed by the pool. Actually talk. Not just pretend everything's fine. He was silent for a long moment, still wearing his sunglasses so I couldn't read his eyes. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me how to fix this. I want you to tell me what I can do to make this right. You can't unfold what happened, Sam. You can't take back that moment. His voice was tired, resigned in a way that scared me. I know that. But I can understand why it hurt you so much. I can understand why you're still hurting. I pulled off my sunglasses, needing him to see my sincerity. Help me understand, Daniel. Because I feel like there's something bigger here, something I'm missing. He finally removed his sunglasses too, and I saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of something he'd been carrying alone. Do you remember when we first started dating? When you told me about Marcus? I nodded, confused about where this was going. You talked about him for over an hour. About the adventures you'd had together, the inside jokes, how you'd grown up together during college. And you said, he paused, his jaw working. You said he was the person who taught you what love could be. That he set the standard. The memory came back, hazy and incomplete. We'd been at that Italian place near my apartment, third or fourth date, the conversation flowing easily over wine. I was trying to be open with you, to share my history. I know. And I appreciated it. I did. But from that moment on, I've been competing with a ghost. Every time I do something romantic, I wonder if he did it better. Every time I make you laugh, I wonder if he made you laugh harder. Every time we fight, I wonder if you ever fought with him, or if that relationship was somehow easier, better. My heart broke for him, for the burden I'd unknowingly placed on him. Daniel, that's not. Let me finish. His voice was gentle but firm. I thought I'd gotten past it. I thought that when you said yes to marrying me, it meant I'd won. That I was enough. But then at our wedding, I saw you with him, and it all came flooding back. The insecurity, the comparison, the fear that I'm always going to be second place in your heart. Tears spilled down my cheeks. You're not second place. Marcus was my past. You're my present and my future. Are you sure about that? The question was so quiet I almost missed it. Because when I saw you touch him, you looked more relaxed, more yourself than you'd been all day. Like being with him was easy in a way that being with me isn't. I thought about his words, really examined them. Was there truth there? Marcus and I had ended things amicably, with no drama, no hard feelings. Our relationship had been comfortable, easy, uncomplicated. With Daniel, things had always been more intense, higher highs but also deeper insecurities, both of us bringing our baggage to the relationship. Easy isn't always better, I said finally. Marcus and I were easy because we never challenged each other. We never pushed each other to grow or be better. We were comfortable, but we also never went deeper than surface level. That's why it ended. We realized we were more like really good friends who happened to be dating. And us. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Us? We're messy and complicated and sometimes insecure, yes. But we're also real. You see parts of me that Marcus never did. You push me to be braver, more honest with myself. You make me want to be a better person, not because you demand it, but because you inspire it. He was quiet, processing. A tropical bird called somewhere in the jungle beyond our villa. An exotic sound that reminded me how far from home we were. I've never told you this, Daniel said slowly, but I almost didn't propose. Not because I didn't love you, but because I was terrified that you'd say yes out of, I don't know, settling. That you'd choose me because I was there and I was good enough, not because I was what you really wanted. Oh, Daniel. I moved closer to him on the daybed, taking his hands. Why didn't you tell me you felt this way? Because it sounds crazy, right? Insecure and paranoid. You gave me no reason to doubt you. You've been nothing but loving and committed. I thought if I just ignored these feelings, they'd go away. He laughed bitterly. Obviously, that didn't work. Feelings don't work like that. They don't disappear just because we ignore them. I squeezed his hands, desperate for him to understand. But Daniel, you need to believe me when I tell you that I chose you. Not because you were convenient or because I'd given up on finding something better. I chose you because when I imagine my future, children, growing old, facing whatever challenges life throws at us, I can't imagine facing any of it without you. Even now, after I've been cold and distant all week, after I've let one moment ruin what should have been the best time of our lives. Even now, especially now, because now I understand what I didn't before. I understand what you've been carrying, and I'm angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, for not being more sensitive to it. Daniel pulled me into his arms finally, really held me for the first time since the wedding. I felt his tears on my shoulder, felt the tension slowly draining from his body. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm sorry for letting this poison our wedding, our honeymoon. I'm sorry for not trusting what we have. I'm sorry too. For being careless, for not thinking about how my actions might affect you. We sat like that for a long time, the Balinese sun warming our skin, the pool water rippling in the breeze. It felt like a turning point, like maybe we could salvage this after all. But as the day faded into evening, as we dressed for dinner and tried to recapture some of the romance we'd lost, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd opened a door that couldn't easily be closed. We'd exposed the cracks in our foundation, and now we'd have to decide whether to repair them or watch them widen until everything came crashing down. The return to our apartment felt surreal. 2 weeks in Bali, and now we were back to the mundane reality of unpacking suitcases, sorting mail, and preparing for work the next morning. I watched Daniel hang his shirts in the closet, each movement precise and careful, and wondered if we'd actually fixed anything or just put a bandage on a wound that needed stitches. "I'm going to run to the store," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "We need groceries." "I can come with you." "It's fine. I've got it." The door closed behind him before I could argue, leaving me alone in the apartment we'd shared for a year before the wedding, the space that should have felt like home but now felt like just another place where we were learning to be strangers. My phone buzzed. Maya's name lit up the screen. "Welcome back, Mrs. Torres. How was paradise? Give me all the romantic details." I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. It was complicated. "Uh-oh. That doesn't sound like honeymoon talk. What happened?" I told her everything. The wedding, Marcus, Daniel's confession in Bali, the fragile truce we'd reached that felt more like a ceasefire than a resolution. Maya listened without interrupting, her silence somehow more comforting than platitudes would have been. "Okay," she said when I finally finished. "Here's what I think, and you can tell me if I'm out of line. But I think you and Daniel need to see someone. A therapist, a counselor, someone who can help you work through this before it gets worse. We've been married for 2 weeks, Maya. Isn't it too soon for marriage counseling? Is it too soon to save your marriage?" Her voice was gentle but pointed. "Sam, I love you, and I love Daniel. But what you're describing, this level of insecurity, these unspoken resentments, this doesn't go away on its own. It festers." I knew she was right, but the admission felt like defeat. We were supposed to be in the honeymoon phase, literally and figuratively. Wasn't couples therapy for people who'd been married for years and lost their way? When Daniel came home, I was still on the couch, staring at the therapist listings I'd pulled up on my laptop. "What are you looking at?" He set down the grocery bags, peering over my shoulder. "I think we should see someone. A couples therapist. To work through everything that's happened." I braced for resistance, but he just nodded slowly. "Yeah. Okay. I think that's probably a good idea." The relief was overwhelming. "Really? Really? Because I don't want to keep feeling like this, Sam. Like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like every time you talk to another guy or mention your past, I'm going to spiral into insecurity. That's not fair to either of us." We found a therapist, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, whose profile said she specialized in newlywed counseling and communication issues. Our first appointment was on a Thursday evening, her office a converted brownstone in a quiet neighborhood, the waiting room decorated with calming blues and grays. "Mr. and Mrs. Torres." Dr. Walsh appeared in the doorway, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an easy smile. "Come on in." The session was harder than I'd anticipated. Dr. Walsh asked us to each describe the wedding incident from our perspective, and hearing Daniel articulate his hurt in front of a stranger made it somehow more real, more serious. "I felt invisible," he said, his voice cracking. "Like I'd just married her, made this massive commitment, and she was more focused on making her ex feel comfortable than on me. And Samantha," Dr. Walsh turned to me, "what was your intention in that moment?" "I was just being friendly. I didn't think about how it might look, how it might make Daniel feel. I was careless." The words sounded hollow even to me, defensive in a way I didn't intend. "I hear that you're apologetic, but I'm wondering if you understand why Daniel felt the way he did. Can you put yourself in his shoes?" I tried. I really tried to imagine watching Daniel casually touch an ex-girlfriend at our wedding, seeing him light up in conversation with someone he'd once loved. The jealousy that rose in my chest was immediate and sharp. "I get it," I said quietly. "If the situation were reversed, I would have been devastated." "So why did you do it?" Daniel's question wasn't accusatory, just genuinely confused. If you can imagine how it would feel, why didn't you think about it in the moment? That was the question, wasn't it? Dr. Walsh waited, giving me space to answer. Because I didn't think you were insecure about Marcus. You'd never said anything, never acted jealous. I thought you were confident in our relationship, in us. I didn't know you'd been carrying these feelings since we started dating. And whose fault is that? Daniel asked, looking at Dr. Walsh. That I didn't tell her. Fault isn't really the framework I'd use, Dr. Walsh said. But Daniel, you're right that not communicating your insecurities puts Samantha in an impossible position. She can't address feelings she doesn't know exist. At the same time, Samantha, you made assumptions about Daniel's comfort level rather than checking in with him before the wedding. We were both quiet, absorbing this. Here's what I'm seeing, Dr. Walsh continued, leaning forward slightly. You two love each other deeply. That's clear. But you've built some unhealthy patterns, Daniel suppressing difficult feelings, Samantha assuming everything's fine without verification. And now you're at a crossroads. You can either learn new patterns, new ways of communicating, or these issues will keep resurfacing in different forms. How do we learn new patterns? I asked. Practice. Patience. Willingness to be vulnerable even when it's uncomfortable. She looked at Daniel. That means telling Samantha when you're feeling insecure, even if it makes you feel weak or irrational. Then to me, and it means creating space for Daniel to express those feelings without getting defensive, without trying to fix them immediately. Sometimes people just need to be heard. We left the session with homework, daily check-ins where we each shared one thing that had made us feel loved and one thing that had triggered insecurity or hurt. It sounded simple, but that first week was excruciating. Today when you mentioned your colleague James, I felt a flash of jealousy, Daniel admitted on day 3, his cheeks flushed with embarrassment. James from accounting? Daniel, he's 60 and married with grandchildren. I know it's irrational. But we're supposed to be honest, right? I bit back my defensive response, remembering Dr. Walsh's words. Thank you for telling me. I appreciate you being honest, even though I know it's hard. My own admissions were difficult too. When you scrolled past my text this morning but responded immediately to your mom, I felt like I wasn't a priority. I didn't even realize I did that. I'm sorry, Sam. Slowly, painfully, we started to understand each other better. Daniel's insecurity wasn't really about Marcus. It was about his ex-fiancée who'd left him for her work husband 3 years before we met. He'd never fully processed that betrayal, and I'd unknowingly triggered those old wounds. My defensiveness wasn't really about the wedding. It was about my dad leaving when I was 12, my lifelong fear of being blamed for things falling apart. We were two people carrying our own histories, trying to build a future together, learning that sometimes love alone wasn't enough. We needed tools, skills, the willingness to do the hard work of truly seeing each other. But even as we made progress in therapy, even as our daily life found a new rhythm, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still walking on eggshells, still one careless moment away from everything shattering again. 3 months after the wedding, Daniel and I sat in Dr. Walsh's office for what she said might be our final session. The fall rain pattered against the windows, and I held a cup of chamomile tea that had long gone cold. I want to revisit something, Dr. Walsh said, flipping through her notes. In our first session, Daniel, you said you felt invisible at the wedding. Can you talk about whether you still feel that way in the marriage? Daniel was quiet for a moment, and I felt my stomach tighten, bracing for his answer. Finally, he spoke. No, not invisible. But sometimes I still feel like I'm competing with a version of Sam's life that doesn't include me. The life she had before, the experiences with other people that I can never be part of. He turned to me, and I saw not anger but sadness in his eyes. And I know that's not fair. I know everyone has a past. But I don't know how to reconcile wanting to know everything about you with feeling threatened by the parts of your history that don't include me. My throat tightened. We'd made so much progress, the daily check-ins, the honest conversations, learning each other's triggers and vulnerabilities. But this core issue remained, stubborn as a stain that wouldn't lift. Daniel, I said carefully, I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. My past with Marcus, with anyone before you, it's not competition. Those experiences shaped who I am, yes, but they're not active threats to us. The person I was with Marcus doesn't exist anymore. I've grown, changed, become someone different. Someone who chose you. I know that intellectually, he said. But there's this voice in my head that keeps saying, what if she realizes she made a mistake? What if she wakes up one day and wishes she'd chosen differently? Dr. Walsh leaned forward. Daniel, do you trust Samantha? Yes. Of course. Do you trust her when she says she loves you? When she says she chose you intentionally and completely? Yes. I want to. Want to isn't the same as do, Dr. Walsh said gently. And here's the hard truth I need both of you to hear. If you can't fully trust each other, if you can't release these fears and insecurities, your marriage will be built on a foundation of doubt. And doubt is corrosive. It will eat away at even the strongest love. The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. I thought about the past 3 months, the progress we'd made, yes, but also the moments when I'd caught Daniel watching me, a question in his eyes he didn't voice. The times I'd edited my stories about the past, leaving out details that might trigger his insecurity. Were we building trust or just learning to hide our doubts better? So what do we do? I asked, my voice small. You make a choice, Dr. Walsh said. Both of you, every single day. You choose to trust. You choose to believe in the relationship you've built rather than fear what could go wrong. You choose to see each other as partners, not adversaries or competitors with ghosts from the past. What if I can't? Daniel's question was barely a whisper, and I felt my heart crack at the vulnerability in it. Then you need to ask yourself if you can live with that uncertainty. Because Samantha can't prove her love to you, Daniel. She can show you, tell you, choose you every day, but at some point, you have to decide to believe her. Otherwise, you'll spend your marriage waiting for disaster instead of enjoying your life together. I reached for Daniel's hand, and after a moment, he took it. His palm was sweaty, and I realized mine was too. I don't want to lose you, he said, not looking at me but at our joined hands. I don't want my fear to destroy what we have. I don't want that either. But Daniel, I can't keep apologizing for my past. I can't keep walking on eggshells, afraid that mentioning an old friend or a memory from before you will trigger another crisis. At some point, we have to move forward, or we'll be stuck in this loop forever. Dr. Walsh nodded. That's exactly right. So here's my challenge to both of you. For the next month, I want you to practice radical trust. Daniel, when the insecurity comes up, because it will, I want you to acknowledge it but not act on it. Thank your brain for trying to protect you, then consciously choose to trust Samantha anyway. And Samantha, I want you to be proactive about reassurance without being prompted. Show Daniel he's your priority, not because you have to prove something, but because you want to. We left the session and walked to our car through the rain. Neither of us spoke until we were inside, the windows fogging up from our breath. I'm scared, Daniel admitted. I'm scared that even if I do everything right, I'll still lose you somehow. I'm scared too, I said. I'm scared that no matter what I do, it won't be enough. That you'll always doubt me, doubt us. We sat with that fear for a moment, letting it exist between us without trying to fix it. The thing is, Daniel said finally, I don't want to live in fear anymore. I don't want to spend our marriage looking over my shoulder, waiting for something to go wrong. That's not fair to you, and it's not fair to me either. So what do? We try. We do what Dr. Walsh said. We choose trust, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. He turned to look at me, really look at me, and I saw something shift in his expression. I love you, Sam. And I choose you. Not because you're perfect or because you'll never make mistakes, but because our life together matters more than my fear. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I love you too. And I choose you, every day. Not because it's easy or because there aren't other options, but because you're my partner, my person, my home. We kissed then, soft and tentative at first, then deeper, with the desperation of two people who'd almost lost each other and were finding their way back. The windows were completely fogged now, cocooning us in our own private world. Over the following weeks, we practiced what Dr. Walsh had prescribed. Daniel started journaling his insecurities instead of letting them fester, sharing them with me when they felt important but processing them himself when they were just fear talking. I made a conscious effort to show him he was my priority. Random texts during the day, planning date nights, being intentional about our time together. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, still moments when old patterns threatened to resurface. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifted. The trust we were choosing became more natural, less forced. The love we'd always had found firmer ground to stand on. 6 months after the wedding, we hosted Thanksgiving at our apartment. As I carved the turkey and Daniel poured wine for our guests, I caught his eye across the room. He winked at me, that crooked smile I'd fallen in love with lighting up his face, and I felt it, the absolute certainty that this was exactly where I was meant to be. Maya pulled me aside while people were serving themselves. "You two seem good. Like, really good." "We are," I said, and meant it. "It's still work, but it's work we're both willing to do." "That's all marriage is," she said wisely. "Choosing each other, over and over again." Later that night, after our guests had left and we were cleaning up together, Daniel pulled me into a slow dance in our kitchen, humming the song that had played at our wedding. The same song that had been playing when everything had fallen apart. "I'm glad you touched Marcus's arm," he said, and I pulled back to look at him, confused. "What?" "I'm glad it happened, because it forced us to deal with issues we'd been avoiding. It made us stronger, made us have conversations we needed to have. If we'd gone into marriage without addressing all of that, it would have exploded eventually anyway, probably with worse timing." I thought about this, about the path we'd taken to get here. "So you're saying our wedding disaster was actually a blessing?" "I'm saying every marriage has its moments of crisis. We just had ours early, and we chose to face it instead of running from it." As we swayed in the dim light of our kitchen, dishes still piled in the sink, leftover turkey in the fridge, I realized he was right. The wedding hadn't been ruined, it had been real. Messy and painful and imperfect, yes, but real. And that was worth more than any fairy tale. Our marriage wasn't the perfect romance I'd imagined on that day in the ivory dress under the chandeliers. It was better, harder and more honest, built on a foundation of choice rather than just chemistry, sustained by work rather than just wishful thinking. Every morning, I wake up and choose Daniel. And every morning, he chooses me back. That's not the ending I expected for our story, but it's the one we're writing together, one imperfect, beautiful day at a time. The wedding was just the beginning. The real marriage, the real us, started with a crack on day one. And we're spending our lifetime learning to fill those cracks with gold, making our imperfect union stronger and more precious because of, not in spite of, where it broke.